Okay, what we're going to look at is the rat class, and the idea here, as we saw, is to create a new data type. This data type is going to represent rational numbers, and every data type has to have two things. It has to have a set of objects in the data type, and then it has to have a set of operations that those objects can respond to. We saw that with the int class, with the char class, with the bool class. So our rat class, we also have a set of operations, and the main program, as we saw, the main program tells us what kind of operations those are supposed to be. So I want to be able to, if you see the main program here, I want to be able to create a rat like that. I want to be able to create a rat without initializing it. I want to be able to add two rats. I want to be able to input and output rats. I want to be able to change things in a rat. So the question is how I do that, and the answer in C++ is you create a class, and the class then creates that data type for you. So in this case, we have the two parts of the class declaration. The first is, as we saw, the private part. The private part sets out the data representation, what the actual data looks like when it's stored in the RAM. And the second part, the public part, represents the operations that this new class knows how to respond to. So, in the main program, we want to be able to say something like this. I want to create a new rat and say the rat's name is going to be X. Well, all we would really need to do to be able to do that is just put this part. Just have a definition by saying I have a class. The name of the class is a rat. Just put the private part. We don't even need the public part. And when I do that, it just says that whenever I create a rat and I give it a name, the rat's going to look like this in the RAM. It's going to have two pieces, right? And they're going to be two integers, one next to the other. And that's because I declare my two data members to be integers. And the first one I call n, and the second one I call d. So the layout is going to look just like this. It's going to have a numerator part and a denominator part. The thing, though, is that users of my class, when they see something like this, the name of this rat is going to be X, because that's the name I gave to it. When they see this, they really won't be able to get anything in and out of this because I've declared it to be private. All right, so the second thing is, we'll see how to get into it by creating these member functions that are part of the class, and they can actually manipulate the data in the middle. What about if I want to say that I have a rat called Y, and my rat called Y actually is initialized. The rat is called Y over here, and the rat initialized to, let's say, 1/2. So when I do that, what I want should happen is that I'm going to get a rat. It's going to look just like before. It's going to have a numerator component and a denominator component, but I want to get a 1 and a 2 in here. In order to do that, in order to accomplish the initialization, so we need to have constructors, right? So we see down here, this already is in the public part, and these constructors, as we saw in class, they get called automatically. I can't call a constructor, but if I define a constructor, the compiler will arrange for the constructor to be automatically called to do the initialization. So a constructor is basically a function, and the constructor that's going to be called over here is this two-parameter constructor. Why is that? Because this two-parameter constructor takes two parameters, one an integer and another integer. And here, that's what I have. I have one integer, and the first parameter I, the first argument, is going to be 1, and the second one is going to be 2. And what's going to happen is, if we look at this two-parameter constructor, it says, well, take the I and store it in n, and then take the j, which is the second parameter, and store it in d. So that's what's going to happen. Now, how is it that the constructors have access to the n and d? I thought they're private. The answer is they are private, but the constructors are member functions, and member functions, by virtue, that's what it means to be a member function, they have access to the private parts of the class. Now, once I have any constructor at all, C++ requires that I also have a default constructor. That default constructor is a constructor called when I have no parameters passed in, and that's the one that's going to get called now when I say rat_x. If I have no constructors at all, I don't need a default constructor. That's a rule of the language. But once I define any constructor, since I define this two-parameter constructor, then I have to have a default constructor. And so here's my default constructor, and all it says is that we're going to initialize the numerator to be 0, and we're going to initialize the denominator to be 1. So in this case, when I declare rat_x, I'm actually going to have a 0 in the numerator and a denominator of 1. And the reason we chose that, we could have chosen any values, but we want to have a denominator of 1 because these rats represent essentially rational numbers, or fractions. We want to make sure that when we start doing arithmetic with these things, we never want to have a denominator of 0, because that's going to give us a divide by 0, which is not a good thing to have. Okay, so that is the first part. We're going to see how we can get to the other pieces of this. We'll see that in the very next video.